All right, I think we are live. Okay. All right, okay, let me just start really quickly by welcoming everybody who've joined. Thank you very much for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Rohingya Women Webinar Series 2021 on the topic of resistance and resilience in reclaiming narratives and reclaiming power. In this series, we will explore powerful stories, inspirations, and resilience of women whose works have been vital to the betterment of Rohingya and Myanmar Burma society in commemoration of the resistance movement for freedom and democracy like the 8888 uprising, as well as the Rohingya Genocide Remembrance Day on August 25th. We cannot forget that women have been fundamental movers and shakers in all of the past and present resistance movements. It is important that their voice, their stories, and their strength are celebrated. My name is Yasminullah, and I am a Rohingya human rights activist who will be your host today. Firstly, let me thank you all for joining us on this call, as well as those who've joined us via Facebook. A reminder that this is a public event, and we will be recording the session and upload the video onto various social media platforms later on. This is the 7th and last of our webinars in this series throughout the entirety of August, where we've actually been interacting, exploring, and discussing different social issues facing women of Myanmar Burma. So please stay tuned with the announcement of the new series. There are very exciting things coming up. Before I introduce you to our very special guest today, I would like to remind everyone who joined us on Zoom to please mute yourself throughout the webinar until the question and answer session. If there are any burning questions you would like answered, please feel free to drop them in the chat box and I'll be sure to ask them for you. You can tweet us at #Rohingya-women-webinar during the session, as well as tweeting the speaker, and I'll drop the information below in the chat box. This week, we have the honor to speak with a peace, human rights, and women rights advocate that people who work on Myanmar profile know very well, Wai Wai Nu. And a short introduction of her is that Wai Wai Nu emerged from 7 years as a political prisoner to become a human rights advocate and the founder of two organizations, the Women Peace Network and the Yangon Youth Center. Through the Women Peace Network, Wai Wai works on building peace and mutual understanding between Myanmar's ethnic communities and to empower marginalized communities throughout Myanmar, particularly in Rakhine State, to advocate for their rights. And her work also aims to reduce discrimination and hatred among Buddhist and Muslim communities and to improve the human rights of the Rohingya people. To engage youth in the peace building process, Wai Wai also founded the Yangon Youth Center, a space where young people from diverse backgrounds come together to learn, share, and explore ideas to promote leadership in social, political, and peace building policy making. Along with hundreds of young people she's engaged with, Wai Wai led a famous social media campaign called My Friend Campaign to counter hate speech and racism. Previously, Wai Wai co-founded Justice for Myanmar in Yangon and a legal and advocacy organization that worked with victims of gender-based violence. Wai Wai received her bachelor's degree in law from University of Yangon in Myanmar and her master's degree in law from the University of Berkeley. In 2018, Wai Wai was selected as a World Economic Forum's Young Global Leader. And in the spring of 2019, she served as a visiting scholar with the University of Michigan Center for the Education of Women. Wai Wai was also a Draper Hills Summer Fellow at the Stanford University Center on Democracy Development and the Rule of Law. Her biography will go on, but I think that we might as well save some time and actually listen to her speak today. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's such an honor to have you on.
Of course, it's my pleasure. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for reading such a long biography.
It's because you have a lot of achievements, so
like
that must be celebrated. So why don't we just jump into the first question? Can you speak a little bit about ethnic minority rights and what that looks like in the global context?
So my understanding of, I think there is no such things as specifically ethnic minority rights. It's really differ from each content or each state to another state. But generally speaking, my understanding of I guess ethnic minority rights is the protections of the minority groups rights, rights that entail like right to existence, right to promotions of their identity, or protections from the discriminations and persecutions, to right to participate in political life in general as a group. And all of these rights has been considered as minority rights under many international laws and treaties and declarations. But going back to the history, I guess, traditionally or historically, there is always a mixture of like ethnicity and religion, or religion and gender identity. When we talk about this, ethnicity, religion, race, and so on, it's always been, it's always intersect on one another, each other. There is no like clear cut of like ethnic groups or religious group, or and so on. So however, what we have seen historically is that whenever when a group become minority in a state, in a nation state, then they are, in most cases, they are targeted. And so I would just say, the minorities in general are persecuted in many forms historically, but the society didn't take the issue seriously and discussed about it. I think the first time the formal discussions around the protections of minorities, I think, has been appeared around 17th century in Europe, and then after World War II. And one of the famous example was the persecutions of Jews during the World War II. And since then, the issues of protections of minorities in general has become more and more critical in most of the international fora and discussions at the United Nations. But until now, I don't believe that the world has taken the issue as a serious issue. Therefore, until now, we are seeing persecutions of minorities, ethnic minorities, religious minorities, gender minorities, all over the world, over and over, everywhere. As we speak today, we have persecutions of minorities in Burma, Myanmar, in my own country, in our own country, against Rohingya, against Karen, against Shans, many other ethnic communities, as well as, in China, against the Uyghur and other ethnic and religious minorities. And it's even happened in the country like Western countries, and including the United States. I think, Muslim ban was one of the clear examples that how a minority group can be targeted even in a country where democracy exists for a longest period. So I guess, generally speaking, it's always it's a combination of religion, ethnicity, and other identities. And being minority, you become more visible and easier to be targeted, and there is no proper protections mechanisms available. And the states are not taking the issues of protections of minority rights, ethnic rights, religious minority rights seriously. So going back to what are the protections mechanisms available, I think one of the strongest treaty that we have available is the genocide conventions on the preventions of genocide. And that gives a strongest protections to protect the ethnic or religious or a group belong to the certain identity. And otherwise, there are, I guess, some other treaties available. There is one famous, there is no such a thing as conventions on the ethnic rights, but there is a conventions on indigenous and tribal people conventions by the ILO. And also, I think in, so we have universal declarations of human rights where generally discuss about protections of people and groups in general. But I think one of the sections on the at the ICC under the ICCPR, I believe it's Article 27, where they talk about protections of ethnic and religious and linguistic minorities. Obviously, most countries are not a party to ICCPR, so they don't follow, right? And there is also a declarations of rights of a person belong to national or ethnic and religious and linguistic minorities. I think United Nations also have these special procedures, special reporter on minority rights. I mean, there are some mechanisms available, but still the states are not taking actions or obliged or obeying their obligations to protect ethnic groups or religious groups or gender groups, minority groups in general. I think the issue should be discussed in a more serious manner, because today, because of failure due to the failure to take the issue seriously, to protect this minority group seriously, we are seeing horrific atrocity crimes. We are witnessing all of this, and we're suffering as the groups, as a group belong to the minority. So yeah, I think we have to discuss about this issue more seriously. But if I may bring back to Myanmar, I think under Myanmar constitutions, there are clauses that says protections of people and religious groups. But in reality, there are some other articles that says that contradict with the protections clause. Therefore, the state has this practice of divide and rules, as well as there is no proper or affirmative mechanisms to protect the minority populations, and the state use the persecutions of minorities as a tool to obtain the power. So yeah, we have, I mean, even 2008, under 2008 constitutions and previous constitutions, 1974 constitutions and 1947 constitutions, there are clauses in the constitution that clearly says state does not discriminate based on ethnicity, religions, gender, and etc. But again, there are some other clauses that override and contradict to those clauses, and state use it for their own advantage. So I think moving forward, these are some of the serious considerations that we need to consider as we draft new constitutions or plan for the new nations, build a new nation.
Thank you so much for going into very, very thorough details of what the international climate looks like for protection of ethnic rights, but also within Myanmar, within our own country, what does it look like? And I think similarly, if I can actually even make that connection, there have been that sort of violation of, not recognizing ethnic communities or not granting them the access or the opportunities to livelihood, or, blatantly just discriminating against them by using this non what is it called, like by using the law that would contradict the basis of the foundation of their constitution. Like Canada has very, very good charter of rights and charter of rights and freedom, but we also have problems with Quebec, for example, using their non basically non-compliant clause to cite or to create laws that are discriminatory to Muslims, or to, religious people who wants to wear religious garment to work or whatever it is. And it's probably similar, but probably less so in terms of intensity. But I really, really appreciate you making that connection, because I think it brings us to very, very important conversation that we need to collectively have, not just within, or among the ethnic communities, but also in the larger society. Why are we using the laws to dehumanize or lessen or reduce people to their identities, to their set certain labels, rather than granting them the basis, granting them the proper opportunities to access resources or a livelihood just as anybody else. Now, you've already touched on this, but I want to ask, in case there are any things that you would like to add. What was the previous and current political climate in Myanmar that prevents ethnic communities from flourishing?
So yes, when we discuss about ethnic rights, it's always unclear in Myanmar whether we're talking about ethnic rights as an ethnic groups or indigenous groups or ethnic nationality groups. It's always a debate until now, but the questions, the rights of ethnic and the rights of the collective rights has been always crucial to Burmese politics, as well as it's integral part of the dignity and the rights of ethnic minority groups in Myanmar. Mm-hmm. That is why I think the topic of ethnic rights specifically is very critical to discuss. And I'm glad that you bringing up this issue here so that we have a chance to talk about this. What has been preventing from the ethnic community flourishes is, we have to go back to the history of Burma. Since the Burma become a nation state since independent states from British colony as a coming together federal union. So ethnic minority groups has agreed to come together as Burma, and it started from the Panlong Agreement, a charter between the some ethnic groups, major ethnic groups from hill tribes, and then Burma proper Burmese leadership, Burman leaders, led by General Aung San. Mm-hmm. So during this agreement, when there was discussions around independence, the Burmese leadership has agreed to provide the right to self-determinations, autonomy, and share equal power sharing. But then once we gain independence, Burmese leadership has failed to keep the promises. At that time, Rakhine State and Mon State was part of bigger Burmese territory. It wasn't a separate state. However, there was, since independence, even Rakhine leaderships and Rohingya and many other ethnic, Karen and many other ethnic communities felt unfairly treated by the Burmese leaderships. Thus, the ethnic community hold guns and they fought against the Burmese and have been fighting against the Burmese leaderships that include Rakhine and Rohingya. And Rohingya community surrendered, and with the promise that Burmese leadership will provide a self-administration zone or direct administrations divisions from the central government in Mayu frontier divisions. There was a promise, and there was a small period of this Mayu divisions administrations though, where Rohingya were directly administered by the federal union, and some sort of autonomy exists for the Rohingya populations at the since in early 1960s. So, but then, in generally speaking, the Burmese military and Burmese leaderships still fail to keep the promise to share power and to provide autonomy to the ethnic minorities across the country. Therefore, we have one of the longest civil war on earth, and a lot of. So that is one of the main reasons why ethnic communities continue to suffer from discriminations, persecutions, and many forms of abuses. As a consequently, the people in the ethnic minorities regions continue to suffer from poverty and many other forms of social economic disaster as well, as a result of all of this political and other forms of unfair treatments and persecutions by the Burmese leaderships. I think these are the main root causes of these the conflict in Myanmar. On the other hand, it's not just end there. So it's not just unfair treatments or targeted persecutions against different ethnic communities, but also divide and conquer, divide and rules against different ethnic communities. Some ethnic communities were targeted more than others, and some were given more privilege than others, and that created created tensions between the ethnic communities. So that is another strategy that Burmese leadership, especially the military leadership, has used against different ethnic communities. And I think one of the last strategy that they use is the using religion as well. So when they target these ethnic communities, they have different level and different strategy based on which religion they belong and which ethnic group they belong. If they are Buddhists, but if they believe in Buddhists, the level of persecutions or the discriminations will be lesser than and compare with the ethnic communities belong to the Christianity or the Muslims, like Rohingya. So in the case of Rohingya, the Rohingya fall at the bottom. So that's how Rohingya were targeted more. So that's another strategy. At the same time, state has actively promoted Buddhist Burman nationalism overall in general. So Buddhists and Burmese ethnic groups and Buddhist people in general felt they are superior than other ethnic communities, and they are entitled to the nations over to entire nations. The states that even they don't belong, they feel like they are entitled to the entire nations, and they have more powers and authorities and say to in the nation building, in the leaderships, in politics, and in leaderships of the country. And that's how divisions, divide and rule, divisions and hate and nationalism has groomed gradually between among the ethnic communities and between Buddhist Burman majority and the rest of the populations. And in all of this complexity, Rohingya are the one targeted the most, and many other communities face similar experiences. For instance, Karen or Kachin or Shan, and even Rakhine face some level of discriminations and persecutions by the Burmese military.
Absolutely. Wow, thank you so much for actually like taking us through the beginning and then like the previous the setup of the system and then now the current climate. I would love to just build onto that and go on to the next question, which is you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but what are the challenges specific to Rohingya people in the struggle to be recognized, not as individual Rohingya, but as a collective ethnic community that belongs to Myanmar, that helped, and was a part and parcel of building Myanmar, or Myanmar Burma, back in the days during the independence. When during this whole resistance against the coup, like when the Spring Revolution succeeds, would the current problem with the Tatmadaw erasing and marginalizing us recur at all? Are there chances of that?
I think this is a really great question, and there has to be a lot of awareness and acknowledgement of ethnic minority rights, especially, we talk about ethnic minority rights in general at the beginning. The respect for the right to existence of the ethnic minority itself is violated for the Rohingya. So for the Rohingya, since I guess 1982, 83, under when the ethnic nationality list was issued by the military dictator General Ne Win in 1983, following the adoptions of 1982 citizenship law, enactions of 1982 citizenship law. The Rohingyas' name was not included, meaning Rohingyas' existence is denied since then. Therefore, right entailed as an ethnic minority are not exist for the Rohingya, and Rohingya cannot claim those rights. That include the birth citizenship rights, right to be citizenship, bona fide citizenship rights, because the citizenship law says those who are ethnic nationalities of the country are the bona fide citizens of the country. If you are not on the list, you are not bona fide citizen. You can become a naturalized citizen, or you can, there are sections at the citizenship law that also says those who are citizens can remain as citizens of the country. However, it's not that simple in the applications, and there are so many level of discriminatory practices against the practices or enforcement of this citizenship law. Therefore, as a result, a majority of Rohingya citizenships are denied systematically. So what I'm saying is that right to exist itself for the Rohingya is violated. Therefore, all other rights as a citizens or as a group is violated. And here in Burma, we are talking the collective rights or as rights as an ethnic groups is so important, not only because of the citizenship status to become bona fide citizens, but also the all other rights along with it, including political rights, right to representations in the politics, in parliament, in governance, and as well as right to have their own autonomy and self-administrations, right to have a say over our own future. Because the politics, as I said, is linked with the ethnicity, being ethnic groups, and the political rights is equal. Therefore, all other ethnic communities are fighting for their rights until today, right? So, going back to your questions, what challenges for the Rohingya to be recognized as a collective community and ethnic communities? Rohingya, where it's a little complex when you talk about Rohingyas' identity and being ethnic groups, but we were always regarded as native in Rakhine State. Even it's become part of Burma, we were native, we were considered native in Rakhine state, and we were treated equally. And once we gained independence, and once Rakhine state or Arakan become part of Myanmar, we were still considered as ethnic indigenous group. Sometimes it's fall under Arkanis or Arkanis Muslims, but then the Rakhine, ethnic Rakhine's leadership set in early 1950s that there is no such thing as Arkanis Muslim, and if they want to be Arkanis, then they have to eat pork and pray Buddha. And then Rohingya leadership at that time took a step to propose their own identity as Rohingya at the parliament, and parliaments actually agreed and adopted the policy that this group of people, Arkanis Muslims, will be called as a Rohingya. The name Rohingya has been in the history for always, but we were very comfortable to use as a Arkanis Muslims as well, as we believe in Muslim, right? And also, you know, you know that in our own term, Rohingya, we describe ourselves as Rohingya, mean Rohingya, or sometimes Arkana, mean Arkanis, right? So we were comfortable. We love the state. We love our nation. So we were very comfortable with it. But then a quest or a seek to like finding our own identity become important in early stage of independence when Rakhine leadership started to use this as for their political interests and try to deny our rights and discriminate us. So what I'm saying is, at some points until 1983, Rohingya were considered as native and granted as considered as an indigenous ethnic minority groups of the country. However, these recognitions has faded or stripped since 1983, and it's become struggle for us to prove as it's become our burden when states started to violate our own rights. There is no mechanism, so there is no venue that protect our identity and our existence. Then it is so unfair that that's fall to the on the shoulder of victims to prove that we are part of this country and this land, and we have these rights. So it's become our struggle. And I think when when Burmese peoples came to realize how each and every minority groups and ethnic groups in Myanmar are being targeted and unfairly treated, when they started to respect and learned the rights of their ethnic minority rights under international law, and when they started to respect human rights, I think the struggle will be over. But now it's a long way to go. However, there is a glimpse of hope under this spring revolutions. I hope that people of Myanmar can build from this moment to educate themselves and envisions towards a fair future of the country. And that's where all of us, where every ethnic groups and every one of us feel belonged and respected our rights and dignity and flourish. The word flourish, you use it, flourish in a country where and build the country we want to build.
Absolutely. I think you made really all of your points are absolutely, amazing, but very, very important to actually acknowledge that the reason why ethnic minority are grasping so hard onto their own identities and their own, rights to self-determination is because it was stripped off of them. The Tatmadaw and the Burman leadership has made it clear to all of us that this was not going to be a part of our own collective rights that they would accept. they would rather us, erase ourselves in between, not call ourselves Shan, not call ourselves Rohingya, turn into Buddhist, accept all these persecution that we would have to endure in all our respective areas, and let them walk all over us, which is not the case. And I really, really hope that, with us putting this webinar out there and more work that we're all going to do, more people would come to understanding that we're not just trying to grasp onto something that isn't already normal before this, but we're just trying to claim our rights and our space to be equal to others in this country. So thank you so much for saying those things. I would like to actually ask you some more questions, and being very, very mindful of the time. I think we could probably ask you a couple more questions and maybe open it up. So one thing that I would like you to address, because I've listened to you many, many times, and I've always, been enamored by you, about this very specific, question that you were always asked. There are a lot of narratives about Rohingya being stateless. What do you say to that?
I mean, according to the classic international law, once someone doesn't have citizenship, then they can be called as a stateless. But in the case of Rohingya, I challenge that definitions, and I challenge that concept and definitions is rather harmful than helpful for the Rohingya. I think when some UN agencies and international community use this concept over the Rohingya, I think they have a good intention. So there is a venue under the stateless conventions that the state has obligations to end statelessness and to provide citizenship to those who doesn't have citizens. But I challenge that concept over the Rohingya because I think it is inaccurate. I believe it is inaccurate to put the Rohingya under that stateless, strict definitions of stateless under the international law, because Rohingya had citizenship before, and their citizenship has been denied, and their citizenship card has been denied. But under the Burmese law, they are still considered. We are still considered as citizens, although we don't have citizenship card. I mean, some of us, most of us, don't have citizenship card, but we still fall under the citizens category under Burmese law. Burmese discriminatory Burmese law, even under the 1982 citizenship law. As I mentioned earlier, this Article 6 of the 1982 citizenship law says, those who were citizens of the country remain as the citizens of the country. So in this case, all of our parents and our grandparents had obtained the citizenship card before. And some of their citizenship card were stripped away, and their children, like us, were denied our citizenship card. But this doesn't mean our rights to be citizens, our rights as citizens is strict, but they arbitrarily taken away our card. So therefore, we consider ourselves citizens of the country. And yet, people with some of this original, like NRC, National Registration Card, which was considered as a citizenship card, was taken away from the people. They were given this temporary identification card from around 1993, 1994 to until 2014. And these cards were also this temporary identification card or white card, you can only issue this card to the citizens. You cannot issue this card according to the law. You cannot issue this card for the non-citizens. Therefore, even if they were holding this temporary registration card, they were still they still fall under the category of citizens of the country. So that is one of the argument that the application, the calling Rohingya as a stateless is incorrect. On the other hand, there is a political implications of this. If you call Rohingya as stateless, mean you discount the fact that they are indigenous group of the country and ethnic nationality group of the country, and they have rights to bona fide citizenship under Article 3 of the 1982 citizenship law, where a nationality group, a group reside in Burma before 1823 can be considered as an ethnic nationality of the group of the country. Obviously, Rohingya lived in Rakhine State forever, and there were some migrations. There were like minority of us maybe coming from Bangladesh or India, but then in many years in the history before Vesali, the Nyawadi, or even under the British colony, it was one country, and we didn't come from any other places. And we even don't have any ancestor. We cannot even trace our ancestors in India or even in Bangladesh. We only have ancestors in Rakhine State. So we believed, and there's a strong, and there are many evidence that we resided Rakhine as our home place before 1823. Therefore, if they apply the law fairly, we were regarded or considered as indigenous or ethnic nationality group before, and we can still be considered. We still have right to be considered as ethnic and nationality group of the country. And by using this international law, easy path that discount and disregard valued our existence to our land, our connection to our land, our attachment to our land, and our rights in general. So therefore, it will become for us even harder to claim our own rights belonging to our own land, attachment to our own land. So it's therefore I challenge the international community that when you apply some of this, mechanisms or or laws or principle concept, it has to be thoroughly assessed, and you need to make sure that you are not doing harm, but you are helping people. Obviously, this stateless concept of the stateless is not helping. You can say Rohingya, stateless Rohingya in the case of Rohingya in the refugee camps in Bangladesh or in Thailand or in Malaysia, where they were born there. It's not their country, and they don't have a citizenship, and they may be refugee or they may be undocumented. In that case, they are stateless in those countries. But in our own original country, we're not stateless. And you will give the chance to the military or the Burmese leadership to deny our right to our land, which is our ethnic nationality rights or the collective rights, the topic of today.
Wow, okay. There's a lot for us to digest, and I am so blown away. I'm learning a lot myself, and I really am so grateful that you brought up this very specific case of us, not allowing the international community to say things for us, to put out narratives for us. And
I will not. At least I will not.
Exactly, I won't too. And this is a really important thing to discuss, I think, because not only are we undermined within our own country and erased from the history, from the collective rights, from being able to, have our own space within the country that we helped build, but also the international community is looking for an easy way out to describe the entirety of our community as stateless, which is very harmful and is giving the way to the Tatmadaw, as you said, to actually alienate us even more, for the rest of the country to not recognize us even more. So thank you so much for making that.
I mean, it's the spirits of Rohingya. What I'm saying is spirits as Rohingya, knowing who we are and believing in our rights and believing in equality and human dignity. And we have nothing else but this spirit. And that is moving us to here. And that's the sense of not giving up and believing in our rights and holding up on it until we get it.
Yeah.
And that's the spirit that we shared among our community. And we will, I believe, we'll continue with this spirit, although majority of us become refugees and continue to suffer from this genocidal campaign.
Thank you so much for reminding us that we are very, very resilient people, just as the topic of actually the name of our webinar, resistance and resilience. I think if we describe Rohingya with 2 words, it would be we have been resisting and we have been super resilient. We've been resilient in our lives. So thank you so much for reminding us of that. Now, the last question, I think this is going to be our last one, and then we can have maybe 2 questions from the audience, if there's any. What would the international community and specifically the NUG need to do in order to address the genocidal erasure of Rohingya people as a collective? And what are the best course of actions for them to at least do no harm and help rebuild our community, help us rebuild our community?
I think what is important for the international community is listening to the requests and asks of the Rohingya people. Don't take easy right and don't decide over our future. Don't think you know better than us. When the military and the previous government initiated this national verification processes, and we, the entire community, resisted and said this is wrong and you cannot do this. We will not accept it and it is unfair. But for the international community, that was maybe they consider as a progress or a first step to a path to citizenship. But for us, being a member of this group, we know that this is a tool the military or the Burmese leadership has continued to use to annihilate our existence in our group and to degrade our status further. And we know it. And they didn't listen to us. And some of these groups, organizations supported these processes. And I would say they are complicit to these genocidal processes. And that was part of the genocidal process. Absolutely. And many of our people call this national verification card as a genocide card, right? So, I mean, this is just one example. What international community need to do is listening to the people and respecting our asks and our voices. We know our issue inside out. We are experts in our issue and we live through this. No one knows better what our future should be look like than us. And you need to take this seriously and listen to us seriously. For the national unity government, I think what I would like to see is that they have the courage to fix the problem and to make the wrong right. Right now, they have taken some initiative, but it is not going to answer Rohingyas' collective futures in the country. I mean, it sounds like they are promising some citizenship to some Rohingya. It's still not clear. There is no promise. But that was the promise from Aung San Suu Kyi government and military government. They've been saying that we will provide citizenship card to those who are eligible for citizenship rights. So that was, for me, it seems like a similar
approach. Yeah.
Similar approach. So now, as I said earlier, Burmese politics is all about ethnicity and being ethnic nationality. Now, Rohingya suffer from many levels that include the denial of our very own existence as a Rohingya, as an ethnic nationality group. And they need to address this. they need to recognize, restore our status as ethnic nationality groups and respect our rights as an ethnic nationality groups. Providing some Rohingya citizenship rights, citizenship card will not address Rohingya conflict, because by providing individuals rights does not guarantee collective rights in politics, in power sharing. Like for instance, we might not, if we are only granted citizenship individually, some individual member of our community will get citizenship, but it doesn't mean we will have equal participations in politics, in administrations, and in other areas, sectors. And therefore, our voice will never be heard enough. As a group exists collectively, our rights will be always violated. Therefore, the discriminations and the unfair treatment towards this group will always remain, and we will not be able to address the issue ultimately. We won't be able to get a lasting peace with this approach. So therefore, I would like to see NUG to take a further step to really have the courage to touch the root causes and to address accordingly with these, with the involvement and engagement, meaningful engagement with the Rohingya communities.
And not just a selected few, right? No. Actually, a lot more people need to be involved, not just those who are privileged among us, but actually those who are in the camps, elsewhere, in exile. I think this needs to be a larger process, and I thank you for bringing that up, because a lot of times we replicate the tokenistic approach from the international community in including or consulting the voices of the community. But when we don't hear enough voices, when we don't hear enough from the people who are currently going through a lot to actually sustain themselves and exist as a Rohingya, I don't think that you can create a plan that would be meaningful enough or that would encompass the entire community. So thank you so much for mentioning that. Now that we've touched on everything, I just wanted to open it up for the audience. If there is anyone who has any question, please feel free to raise your hand. Oh, there's someone already sent. Okay, so Brother Mongjotin, he asked, the genocide systemic killing is going on. Yesterday, the Sarara was killed of our okay, I'm not entirely sure what the question was, but basically someone was killed, someone killed the Rohingya administrator, and another one still in control with some villagers. As you know, we're not guaranteed safety here, I think, meaning in Rakhine State, and security. Is there any explanation of how we can escape the ongoing genocide? I think that's the question. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think, as a member of community, what we can do is raise awareness and collect the violations. Everything happened, collect this, document these violations, and use your channels to raise awareness. Whether through social media, through conventional media, or through your contacts, and raise awareness among yourself and with the world and with the larger populations, and document, raise awareness. That's what we can do at minimum. And depending on who we are, I think we have a different level of capacity and ability to act on. And each and every one of us need to take our own and know our own ability, how we can do it, and take actions. That's what we can do as a Rohingya. But for the larger Burmese society, an international community, it is essential that we bring justice and accountability for what has happened to the Rohingya and other ethnic communities to stop ongoing genocide. Otherwise, the Rohingya and the entire country is at risk of mass atrocities, and we are witnessing today. So it is essential that the suffering of the communities are not ignored and forgotten, and take actions to bring about justice.
Thank you very much. I think that's about all the time that we have for today's webinar and for the question. Before we end, I would like to show some of the things, some of the resources, and you know, if there is any call to actions that you have, my Wai Wai, please feel free to let us know. I will also drop the link to the Women Peace Network's website. And let me just quickly share the screen right now to show you. Okay. So this is the website, and I'll share the screen. Go. So if you want to follow more of Ma Wai Wai's work, you can go to her Twitter, Facebook. You know, she has a lot of platform that that shares her work, but also at Women Peace Network. And here is the outlook. Sorry, let me just make that a bigger screen. There we go. So this is what it looks like. There are a lot of things that you could do. There are, you know, for those who might be watching this later, there are also, you know, ways to support the Women Peace Network as well. And way more information there for you to actually access and help and rally around the Women Peace Network's important work. Now, Ma Wai Wai, do you want to share any last thoughts before we end?
Not really. I think, you know, this is, I mean, what I would say is people watching from Myanmar, this is a great opportunity for us to reflect on what has happened to our communities in Myanmar, and have courage to envision a new future where you know, everyone's rights are protected and respected, you know, to envision an inclusive futures for Myanmar. It is, I think, we all have responsibility to dream that future and to take actions. Unless we have a new visions and a dream for the new future, our country, I know Myanmar may not be able to overcome from the darkness. So to bring the light to the country, it is each and every one of us has a responsibility to envision some new inclusive futures.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again for joining us today. We've heard a lot today from Ma Wai Wai, a human rights champion who has faced so many challenges in her life and decided to resist and resiliently dedicate her life to helping others. This is a very common experience among women in all parts of the world, ridden in complex and political instability, that we rise to the occasion and resist against the tide of injustice. As we move along in our conversation, I hope that in our own capacity, we would encourage, support, and rally around these women whose works have been the driving force of so many wonderful social changes. And with that, please stay tuned for our next series announcement at my Twitter, as well as on our YouTube channel, the Rohingya Women Webinar Series. You can just search that and it'll come up. I will be sitting down with a lot more women, and there will be other hosts as well, where we're hoping that in the future we can switch it up and make sure that other women are also featured on this channel. With that, thank you very much for all of your support in the entirety of August, where we've had 7 different conversations with 7 different women. It has been really, really inspiring for myself. And I've learned a lot throughout this entire month, and I hope that you did as well. If there are any further questions, please feel free to reach out to both of us, and many more women that have been featured on this webinar. All of their social media accounts are available online, and feel free to reach out and give us your feedback. For today, I would like to thank Wai Wai Nu again for joining us today and giving us so many gems and so many wisdoms of hers, and walking us through all these insights that you've learned, and obviously through your lived experience as well. So thank you very much. It's such a great way to end today's conversation and the entire month-long conversation. Thank you again for all of your support, and please stay tuned for the next series. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.